In order to understand Francis Schaeffer, we need to get a firm grasp on the philosophies of Hegel, Kierkegaard, and the existentialists of the 20th century. Hi, I'm Chuck Livermore. I'm a Christian author and speaker. And in this video, I'm going to help you understand the philosophical basis for the modern world as described in the book, The God Who Is There by Francis Schaeffer. In the first video in this series, I described Schaeffer's perspective of the world as a river valley. One side of the valley was the land of absolute truth. The other side of the valley was the land of relative truth. People moved from one side of the valley to the other by crossing the river that separated the two sides of the valley. The river was called the line of despair. According to Francis Schaeffer, the German philosopher, Georg W.F. Hegel, who lived from 1770 to 1831, was the man who built the bridge across the river called the line of despair. He built the bridge, but he himself never crossed it. Hegel was quite content to live on the rational side of the valley. But before we explain Hegel's philosophy, let's back up a bit and talk about the way people considered the world before Hegel. Prior to Hegel, people considered the world to be a series of causes and the effects of those causes. You could look at anything in the world and ask yourself, what caused that? If you determined the cause, you would realize that cause was the effect of a prior cause. This string of causes and effects could be traced all the way back to an eternal cause that wasn't the effect of any other cause. This was the primary cause of everything, and it, itself, was not caused by anything, but simply always was there. In order to cause everything in the universe to exist, this cause would have to be outside of the universe. This cause would be timeless, since time and matter were created at the same time as the universe during what scientists call the Big Bang. This cause has to be more powerful than anything in the universe, since it is impossible to cause an effect that is more powerful than its source. Aristotle called this cause the unmoved mover. Most of us, practically everyone before Hegel, called this mover God. Schaeffer imagined Hegel sitting in a tavern with some of his friends, discussing philosophy, when he says,
I have a new idea. Instead of things functioning as a cause and effect, perhaps we could see something as a thesis. And its opposite, the antithesis. Our task is to find the place where both the thesis and its corresponding antithesis are both true. This is the synthesis.
This new way of perceiving the world was very attractive. The people who considered themselves wise in their own eyes could look down their noses at the ignorant masses. They would view them as rubes. If you thought something to be true and its opposite a lie, it was because you just didn't understand the liar's perspective. You could synthesize the truth and realize that the lie could be true too. The world was no longer black and white, true or false, nor good versus evil. There were root causes and power structures that influenced societal norms. You could do away with the concept of right and wrong and instead attempt to understand an ethic that relies on the particular situation. The world moved from black and white to a foggy gray. But the problem with Hegel's philosophy was that it was just too convoluted and relativistic to understand by reason alone. This is where the Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard comes into the picture. Kierkegaard was a deeply religious man. He concluded that if we can't reconcile the synthesis of good and evil, truth and falsehood, we should simply accept it by faith. In doing so, Kierkegaard walked across the bridge built by Hegel. He crossed the river known as the line of despair into the land of relative truth. Kierkegaard, who wrote mostly in the 1840s, proposed that we needed to take a leap of faith, just believe what was right to actually be right. It didn't have to be reasonable or rational. We just had to accept that it was and let our hearts lead us. As Schaeffer sees it, both the secular and religious followed Kierkegaard and crossed Hegel's bridge from the land of absolutes and journeyed to the other side of the valley where truth was relative. The two groups worked together and built a house on the relativistic side of the valley. The house was a two-story structure they called existentialism. That's a sociological theory that denies the real purpose for mankind and suggests that we should merely react to the consequences of our choices. Though they had both worked together to lay the foundation of the structure, the two groups began to separate themselves from each other. The secular folks worked on the lower half of the building, and the religious folks were working on the top floor. The secular group still believed there was a reasonable explanation for life, but it was too obscure to be discovered, and so they just quit trying and gave up hope of ever finding it. This led to pessimism. Now, the religious people didn't understand the meaning of life any better than their secular cohorts, but they still believed in an afterlife where everything would be revealed. This made them very optimistic. We're going to talk about the religious people on the second floor in a future video. For now, let's turn our attention back to the ground floor and the secular thinkers. The lower story was divided into three wings, and the secular folks that dwelt in each wing considered themselves to be unique. However, they were all unified in their rejection of the spiritual and ethereal worlds. They only dealt with the tangible world. To consider things like love, purpose, and meaning, they had to climb the stairs to the second story and talk to their religious counterparts. The three wings were constructed by men of the 20th century. The first wing on the lower story was the Swiss wing. This was led by Karl Jaspers. Their emphasis was on a non-traditional final experience that defied explanation. When someone had this final experience, they understood the meaning of life. Since it was unexplainable, they could only proclaim that they had or had not experienced it. The French wing followed the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. He perceived the universe as absurd and incomprehensible. Despite this fact, we can authenticate ourselves by choosing a path to follow. We can follow a path of kindness, peace-seeking, and self-control, or a path of cruelty, violence, and debauchery. Either way is considered moral because both are authentic. You're being true to yourself, whichever way you choose. In the German wing of existentialism, Martin Heidegger was the most pessimistic of them all. We are authenticated not by choosing to be authenticated, but we recognize our authentication by a feeling of angst. When we are filled with dread, we know what it means to be authentic. Now, these ideas may seem like they're a little out there, a little crazy, but that's just an indication that you're still living in the land of absolutes, and you haven't crossed the bridge that Hegel built with Kierkegaard and the others. But don't think that nobody takes these ideas seriously. The people who do may be living in the house next door, or possibly in one of your own bedrooms. If you found this video informative or helpful, please give it a thumbs up or like the video. And if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to discuss these issues further, please leave a comment below and I'll get back to you. Thank you for watching, and may you always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have in Jesus Christ. Bye for now.